The movie, based on true events, begins with Louise absent-mindedly leafing through the diary of mountaineer Tony. After that, we are transported back in time. 1936. Germany is waiting breathlessly for the Olympics, preparing for the Anschluss of Austria, the redivision of Europe and war. The streets are buzzing with patriotic enthusiasm. In the newspapers there are inspiring speeches, marching columns. In gyms and barracks, young athletes build their ambitions, to be part of something great. In their heads is the idea of conquering the northern peak of the Eiger, a treacherous ice colossus dubbed the Wall of Death. Whoever passes it first will become a legend. Louise works as a stenographer in the news department of a Berlin newspaper. She quickly writes down the dry orders of the editors while the newsroom chatter goes on. The Führer wants the Germans to be the first to conquer the summit of the Eiger. The bosses are whispering, but can't remember the names of the outstanding climbers. Louise calmly calls out the names, Andreas Hinterstoesser and Tony Kurz. Silence ensues. She is immediately sent on a business trip. Let her find the climbers and prepare the material. At this time, the climbers are practicing, climbing up the mountain. At the top there is a victorious shout. They are the masters of the height. Down below, in the barracks, there is already talk. Someone is seriously preparing to storm the Eiger. As they descend, they meet Louise. Something elusive flickers between her and Tony, but the conversation quickly dies down. After all, everyone is now discussing the summit of the Eiger. But Tony stares gloomily into the distance. He's not interested in reckless glory. He knows that in these mountains, skill is nothing if you're unlucky. And when your fingers fall apart on an icy slope, you are no longer a hero, but a corpse. So he's not willing to risk his life for that kind of glory. Louise returns to the newsroom. In the department, the editors discuss the new news. Austrians Willy Angerer and Eddie Reiner are going to storm the north peak of the Eiger. The German newspapers are waiting for heroes, which means a report is needed. Louise is an excellent photographer and the editor takes her on a business trip. Meanwhile, Tony gives in to Andreas' entreaties. The road to Eiger is a challenge in itself. 700 kilometers on a bicycle over hills and plains seems like a trifle compared to the 4 kilometers of an icy sheer wall. On July 14th, they arrive at base camp at 2,000 meters. At the foot, in a warm hotel, journalists are already sharpening their feathers, anticipating the triumph of the pride of the Reich. Andreas and Tony are soldiers of the German army, but without sponsors or patrons. They bought their equipment with their own money. Unlike the Austrians, for whom the Reich paid for every last carabiner. While the climbers are planning the route, Louise goes on tour with her editor. Bad weather forces the foreign climbers to abandon the climb, but the Germans and Austrians don't back down. It's not just a sport, it's a demonstration of the Reich's power. In the evening, journalists organize a dinner party. Under the clinking of glasses are speeches about glory, the spirit of the nation and the conquest of the elements. Tony listens, but does not believe in this pathos. He leaves early. At night he stands outside Louise's room and holds out his journal to her. She kisses him goodbye, unaware that this is the last time she will see him like this. At dawn on July 18th, with the hotel still asleep, Tony and Andreas gather their gear. Moonlight barely illuminates the steep cliffs. But soon the first mishap occurs. Andreas has no ice crampons in his backpack. Going down to get them means wasting valuable time. The solution is to chop the steps with ice axes. At the bottom, in the hotel, gawkers take out binoculars. The journalist is already dictating an article into his phone, broadcasting the event live. At the same time, rocks fall from above. There is a deafening rumble. Willy Angerer, one of the Austrians, is hit on the head with a stone. After lunch, on the Red Rock section, Andreas makes a Herculean effort to pass a key section that will later be named in his honor, the Hinterstoesser Traverse. The Austrians follow him using his ropes. But Andreas, against Tony's protests, takes them off. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the climbers reach the first ice field at 3,000 meters. Downstairs, in the hotel, champagne is flowing. They celebrate the inevitable success. July 19th. They decide to go further, but suddenly notice that Willy Angerer is weakened because he is wounded in the head. His comrade offers him to go down, but he does not want to miss such glory. He is only interested in the summit, so despite the risk, he decides to continue on his way. By 11 a.m. the group reaches the second ice field. Willy loses his balance, almost dragging his partner with him. Every step becomes deadly for him. Meanwhile, the Germans find something that makes them freeze, the belongings of Karl Meiringer and Max Siedelmar, climbers who died here a year ago. Eiger has already taken their lives. And he's hungry for more victims. The teams, united now not only by a common goal but also by a grim premonition, continued their ascent. Willy, However, grew weaker with each step. He was becoming a mere weight on the rope. At the moment when the ice beneath his feet treacherously cracked, he snapped. But the others managed to hold on to him. However, not for long. The creaking of bones and the cry of pain suggested that Willie could not go any further. The open fracture finally crossed out his dreams of conquering the summit. A man's life is more important than glory, so they decided to retreat. And that's when the mountain itself stepped in. The wind picked up, the snow turned into a white veil, and visibility dropped to almost zero. Down below, in the warm hotel, the journalists had already started packing up after learning that they had retreated. Heroism is good, but failure needs no witnesses. Louise, unlike her colleagues, is also human, and she began to worry for their lives. The climbers reached the Hintersteisser Traverse and only now realized their mistake. The ropes they had removed earlier did not allow them to go back. There was only one alternative left, a steep descent into the unknown. It was here that nature struck. An avalanche struck the group, burying two of them underneath. Andreas rushed up the rope, but the wedge on which his life was held treacherously popped out of the crevasse. Then Hintersteisser made a decision. In one motion he cut the rope, letting himself fall into the chasm and leaving Tony a chance. Louise heard his scream through the noise of the storm. At the hotel, she desperately demanded a rescue operation. At first they didn't want to risk their lives for the rescue. However, then they still went on the search. When they reached the cliff, they saw that Tony was still alive, but could not climb down on his own. The wind picked up and they decided to leave the rescue for tomorrow, leaving him in the icy darkness. But Louise didn't leave. Through the night, the wind and the snow, she made her way to the ledge where Tony remained. She knew she couldn't save him, but the only thing she could do for him was to be there for him. In the morning, the rescuers returned and threw the rope, but the distance was too great. Tony had to do the impossible, unravel the rope into thin strands, tie them together and pull them toward him. Tony gritted his teeth and lowered the structure down, hoping the rescuers would tie the rope to it. Each movement is made with unbearable difficulty. One arm is completely frostbitten, turning into a useless piece of ice, and the body protests against each new effort. Soon it becomes clear that the length of the rope is not enough. The rescuers hastily tie pieces of rope together, creating a long one. However, fate, as if mocking, adds another twist to this deadly plot. The knot connecting the pieces is too thick to pass through the safety carabiner. Tony, already hanging on the last step to salvation, suddenly freezes in midair. Louise keeps her eyes on him. She screams, urges, demands that he not give up. But Tony can no longer hear her. His strength is leaving him with the last vestiges of warmth. His frostbitten fingers are no longer obeying, his breathing is hitching, his consciousness is going out like a lamp that has run out of oil. A moment ago, this was a living man, still able to cling to life. Now he is just another silhouette against the merciless wall. But Germany has indeed not forgotten its fallen heroes. In 1938, a group of climbers, inspired by their exploits, repeated the same route, conquering the northern peak of the Eiger for the first time. The Third Reich had no trouble turning this achievement into a symbol of its power, a sporting triumph under the flag of annexed Austria. This is where the movie ends. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and put a like on the channel. See you soon.